I was still hooked up to IV fluids when she filed the new deed without my name. That sentence has burned into my memory more than the chemo that came after. When I came home from the hospital after 2 months of fighting pneumonia and a mild stroke, I didn't expect roses or balloons. I didn't expect a banner saying welcome back. I didn't even expect my favorite soup. But I also didn't expect to find out that the house I built brick by brick with my late husband was no longer mine. It was a casual line tossed over dinner by my daughter-in-law Kelsey. "Oh, by the way, we had to move things into our name while you were out." Simpler that way. She didn't look up from her phone. My son didn't say a word. Simpler that way. They didn't even ask. Didn't even tell me until it was done. That was the moment something in me shifted. The trust cracked. The silence I once considered strength now felt like a prison. They had stolen something deeper than property. They had taken my dignity. And they thought I wouldn't notice. But I noticed, and I remember everything. What would you do if you found out your child had quietly erased you from your own home while you were too sick to fight back? Let me know in the comments. Add your city. Let's see how far this truth travels, because this isn't just my story anymore. It could be yours too. My name is Margaret Lane. I'm 71 years old, and I built this life with my bare hands, literally. Back when I was 19, I married Edward, a carpenter with a gentle smile and a stubborn belief in never borrowing more than we could pay. Together, we built a modest but strong house on Maple Drive. We poured the foundation ourselves, sanded the beams, painted every wall. It wasn't just our home, it was a monument to love, sweat, and survival. That house held our story in its walls. We raised our only son, Peter, in that home. He had asthma as a child, and I used to sit beside his bed every night, counting his breaths. When Edward passed away 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I kept the house alive. I polished the wood floors he built. I paid the property taxes myself. I fixed the broken kitchen pipe after a winter freeze on my hands and knees with a wrench and a YouTube tutorial. Peter was my pride, my miracle baby. I had him after 3 miscarriages. I was 40 when he was born, and the doctors had called it a geriatric pregnancy. But he came out strong and perfect. He met Kelsey at university. She was sharp, ambitious, always dressed like she was going to court, even if it was just brunch. I welcomed her. At first, I even gave them the master bedroom when they moved in during Peter's first job hunt. "Only until you two get on your feet," I said. That temporary stay turned into 4 years. It began subtly. Kelsey would rearrange my kitchen for better flow. She'd host parties without telling me. One time I walked in to find her showing our house to one of her friends on Zoom, calling it the home we just bought. She laughed it off when I questioned it, saying, "Oh, just a turn of phrase." But her tone was never a joke. There was always something calculated behind her smile. She started leaving brochures for senior communities on the table. Recommended I look into yoga for elders and said it like a command. Every comment felt like a tiny nudge toward the edge. And Peter, he was always somewhere else, working late, didn't hear. "Let's not make a scene, Mom." He didn't notice or didn't want to. And I didn't push, because I believed that one day they'd move out. One day they'd say thank you. One day the respect would return. Instead, one day I got sick. And that's when everything changed. It started with a cough. Then fatigue so deep it made walking to the mailbox feel like a marathon. The doctor said it was a respiratory infection complicated by my age and stress. I was hospitalized for 4 days. Kelsey visited once for 15 minutes and brought her assistant with her. She stood at the foot of my hospital bed, eyes, scanning the machines and tubes like she was sizing up liabilities. "You'll bounce back," she said flatly. "But we might want to consider long-term solutions in case this becomes recurring. Long-term solutions." When I returned home, I noticed the locks had been changed. Kelsey handed me a shiny new key, unmarked, unlabeled, while smiling like it was a party favor. "I had to upgrade the security system," she said. "You'll thank me later." My room had been redecorated. The photos of Edward and me were gone. My old writing desk moved to the basement. And Peter, sweet oblivious Peter, told me Kelsey thought you'd like a fresh space to recover. She meant well. But the real blow came weeks later. One morning, as I reached for the manila folder where I kept all my important papers, birth certificate, will, house, deed, it was gone. Kelsey said, "Oh, I reorganized for you. You know, to make everything more streamlined." My chest tightened. "Where's the house deed?" She blinked. "We put everything into a family trust while you were in the hospital. Makes things easier, you know, if something happens." "What do you mean, we?" She smiled. "Peter and I? We're your family now, right?" That night, I didn't sleep. I crept down to the basement and found an old USB drive Edward had once used to scan all our important documents, just in case. There it was, the original deed. My name, alone. But when I searched public records the next day, the property deed had been updated, transferred, signed while I was unconscious in a hospital bed, to Kelsey, and Peter had co-signed. I sat on the porch, the weight of betrayal heavier than any illness. I thought of all the times I'd given compromised bent so they wouldn't break. And yet they took the only thing I had left, my home. I was no longer the invisible woman in the corner of the house. I was the woman being erased from it entirely. I didn't cry right away. That came later. First came the shaking and invisible tremor deep inside me that I couldn't control. My hands, my jaw, my thoughts, all trembling under the pressure of disbelief. My home, the one Edward and I had paid for in monthly sacrifice, the one I'd cooked in, cried in, raised Peter in, gone. On paper, legally stolen while I lay unconscious, tubes in my arms. I didn't confront Kelsey immediately. I knew better. She thrived on scenes. She'd twist them, weaponize my anger, and use Peter as her shield. Instead, I needed clarity. I called the county clerk's office the next morning and confirmed the deed had been altered. A durable power of attorney had been enacted during my hospital stay, one I had no memory of signing. The woman on the phone said, "It was notarized. Do you have any reason to believe you were incapacitated or coerced?" I nearly dropped the phone. That evening, I called Lorraine, my best friend from college, now a semi-retired estate attorney in Seattle. She was blunt, as always. "They forged your signature, or worse, tricked you when you were drugged up. Either way, it's actionable." Her voice steadied me. "Do not let this go. Paper trails don't lie, Audrey." I spent the next few days quietly gathering documents. I took photos of the old deed on Edward's USB drive. I recorded a backup to cloud storage. I went through Kelsey's desk when she was out one afternoon and found a sticky note, finalize revocation letter. "Ask G about adding my name solo." My stomach twisted. I downloaded a recording app onto my phone and began leaving it on every time I entered a room with her. I needed proof. Proof of intent. Proof of manipulation. And above all, proof of her true character. The final straw came when I overheard her talking to her friend on the phone. She didn't realize I was folding laundry nearby. "No, I'm not worried. She'll be in a home by Christmas. That house is already under my name. Peter's too soft to fight me on it." I clutched a towel to my chest, breath frozen. I'd heard enough. That night, I called Lorraine again. Let's do this, I said. She paused. Are you ready for war? I stared at the hall at the framed photo of Edward on the wall. I didn't start it. But I'm ready to end it. We didn't file anything right away. Lorraine said the more they revealed, the stronger my case would become. She helped me draft a formal request for medical records from the hospital. Every chart, every medication, every moment I was under sedation. I needed to prove that I was in no condition to legally sign anything. While the paperwork was processing, I continued my quiet resistance. I started storing copies of everything: emails, bank statements, even passive-aggressive sticky notes Kelsey left on the fridge, like, remember to ask next time before using the oven for your dinner. Her tone dripped with fake politeness. Then came the visit to Greg the notary, who supposedly witnessed me signing the transfer documents. Lorraine and I set up an appointment under a different name. He greeted us warmly, unaware of who I really was. Lorraine casually asked about his recent workload. He mentioned helping a couple family members arrange an estate thing. Older lady not quite alert, but her daughter-in-law insisted she understood. He said it with a laugh. Lorraine's face didn't move. Do you keep copies of the IDs you notarize? He nodded. Always. Law requires it. We got a copy of the file later that week. The signature on my ID looked shaky, like it had been traced. The medical records arrived the next day, showing I was under heavy sedation on the exact date the signature was filed. That night, I went out to the backyard with a cup of tea. The stars were out, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel powerless. I felt sharp. I walked back inside and past Kelsey in the hallway. She glanced at me and raised an eyebrow. Something wrong? No, I smiled. Everything's finally starting to make sense. She blinked. For a moment, just a flicker of something uncertainty crossed her face. Then it vanished. I spent the next few days quietly preparing. Lorraine began drafting legal paperwork. We lined up a private investigator to confirm a few financial transfers Kelsey had made. I even met with Edward's old friend Harold, who happened to be a forensic handwriting expert. No one knew what was coming. Not Peter, not Kelsey, not even the house itself, which still smelled faintly of Edward's cologne whenever the sun hit the old armchair. I wasn't just taking back a house. I was taking back my name, and when it was time to strike, I would have everything I needed. Lorraine suggested we file the petition on a Monday strategically chosen, she said, because courts were busiest and delays would keep Kelsey from reacting too fast. By 10 a.m., the emergency motion to freeze any transfer or sale of the house had been submitted. Along with it were affidavits from my doctors, Greg's careless notarization log, and a signed declaration from me outlining the deception. Peter found out by lunchtime. He stormed into the living room, red-faced, slamming the door behind him so hard a painting trembled. What the hell, Mom? You're trying to destroy everything we've built. I looked up from my knitting. I'm trying to protect what your father and I built. Kelsey followed behind him, her arms crossed, already poised for battle. This is insane, she said coolly. You're being manipulated. By lawyers. Probably jealous friends who told you I was out to get you. Don't insult my friends, I said, standing. And don't insult my memory. I may be old, but I remember what trust feels like, and what betrayal looks like. Peter's eyes flickered. You're sick. You were sick. And you were absent, I shot back, voice rising. When I needed you, you weren't there. You were too busy letting your wife play Monopoly with my life. Kelsey cut in. You didn't need to be involved. We were just trying to, what, help me? By forging my signature, by taking my name off the deed to the home I paid for, brick by brick. Silence. Then I turned to Peter. Do you know what hurts the most? Not the house, not even the lie. It's that I raised you to be better, and you watched it happen. You let her do it. His lips parted like he wanted to deny it, but he didn't. Lorraine, ever the tactician, stepped forward from the kitchen where she'd been quietly waiting. We've submitted everything to the court, and if you attempt to contest the injunction or interfere with the proceedings, you'll face a fraud investigation. Kelsey turned to Peter, her voice a hiss. Tell me you didn't know she was doing this. He looked between us, me, his wife, the life he'd chosen, and the life he came from. I didn't know she'd. I thought it was just updating some paperwork. You thought, I said bitterly. That's your defense. I walked past him down the hallway and into the room Edward once used as his study. I needed to breathe. The walls still held his scent oak and books and dignity. I let the door close behind me, my hand trembling on the knob. Outside, I heard Kelsey finally raise her voice. She's bluffing. She won't win. That house was a gift, but she was wrong. This wasn't a gift. It was mine. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window of Edward's old study, watching the garden sway in the breeze. The same garden I had planted decades ago, each rose bush, each row of lavender, a living timeline of the life we had built. Kelsey and Peter had gone to their room without another word. I could sense the air shifting. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was personal. It always had been. The next morning, I made a call. My financial advisor, Mr. Barnes, a quiet man who had worked with us for over 20 years, answered with his usual calm. I need to reassign control of all the accounts I said, and I need every automatic transfer to Peter's household stopped effective immediately. He didn't even hesitate. Yes, Mrs. Mercer, I'll initiate everything right now. Just confirm health insurance, mortgage, supplement utilities, and the education fund for the twins. All of it, I said, and freeze the trust until further notice. As I hung up, there was a strange quietness in my chest. Not rage, not sorrow, just space. Room to breathe. That afternoon, Kelsey knocked on my door. I opened it without a word. She was all polished calm, but her eyes were tight with panic. The bank called. Our mortgage transfer bounced. They said you. I said I needed space. I interrupted, stepping out and gently closing the door behind me. And now I'm claiming it. You're punishing us. The kids too. No, I said. I'm protecting myself. And if I'm not mistaken, you once told me I was just a guest here. Well, the host has decided the guests have overstayed. She scoffed. You can't just change everything overnight. I didn't. You did, when you changed the deed. Peter joined us halfway through the hallway phone, still in his hand, his face pale. You cancelled everything. Yes. But what about the kids' school fees? You should have thought of that, I said coldly before forging a document behind my back. His mouth opened, closed, and then he looked away. You never even asked me, Peter. Never once checked if I wanted to give you the house. You just assumed I'd be too weak, too sick to stop it. I didn't know how bad it had gotten, he murmured. No, you just didn't care to ask. Kelsey stepped in again. We can fix this. Talk to the lawyers, undo the motion. You don't need to drag this into court. It's already there. I turned and walked past them down the stairs and toward the front door. You can stay here until the hearing, but after that, you'll need to make other arrangements. Peter didn't follow me. Kelsey did. Her voice was tight. This is revenge. No, I said, opening the door and letting the late afternoon sun pour in. This is correction. I stepped out into the garden, my garden, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was shrinking. I was expanding. I moved out 3 weeks later, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Staying in that house, our old home had become like walking through a cemetery where the headstones bore the names of trust, loyalty, and dignity. I didn't want to look at my rose garden and wonder what else would be stolen next. So I left, but I didn't vanish. I rented a small cottage near the water just outside Charleston. It was cozy, sunlit, and filled with possibility. For the first time in decades, I chose furniture I liked instead of what matched the family's preferences. I painted the walls. I opened the windows every morning. I even started wearing color again, deep purples, ocean blues. No more beige to blend in. And then I returned to something I had abandoned years ago, teaching piano. I placed a small ad in the local paper, expecting maybe 1 or 2 responses. By the end of the week, I had 14 inquiries. Most were children. A few were retirees. One was a widow named Marlene, who became my closest friend within weeks. We spent Tuesday afternoons at the cafe down the street, laughing over coffee and humming to songs we remembered from our youth. Financially, I was fine, better than fine. Cutting Peter off had been symbolic, but it also made me realize how much I had given away without pause, simply because I believed love meant endless sacrifice. Now I reviewed my investments with Mr. Barnes personally. I updated my will. I funded a scholarship in Edward's name for women over 50 pursuing the arts. And I began a journal. Not a diary, no. This was documentation. Every betrayal, every recovery, and every time I chose not to disappear. Around the 10th entry, I wrote something that made me cry when I reread it. I thought they buried me, but I wasn't buried. I was planted. Then one quiet Saturday, I received an email from a name I hadn't seen in years, Tessa Harper. She had been my best friend before Edward and I married. We'd lost touch after my wedding, slowly pulled apart by distant children and the silent demands of motherhood. But here she was, again writing Audrey. I saw your name in the local news. A music student of mine says you're the best teacher she's ever had. Is that you? If so, can we meet? We did. Tessa had aged just like me, laugh lines, silver strands, but her warmth hadn't dimmed. Over wine and roasted vegetables, I told her the whole story, every brutal detail. She didn't flinch. When I finished, she said, "You know it's not too late for what I asked, to start over, but this time with no one erasing you." That night, I realized I didn't just want peace, I wanted presence. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be part of something that I chose. So I bought back the house, not the one Peter and Kelsey were living in, no. That would be sold by court order soon. I bought the home Edward and I had built together, the first one, the one we had sold, when we thought we were moving closer to family. The new owners had put it up for sale just months ago, and with zero hesitation, I signed the papers and took the keys. I walked in with Tessa turned on the lights and said, "I'm home." News of my return spread faster than I anticipated. A week after moving back into my original home, I received a certified letter from Kelsey. It wasn't a note of apology. It wasn't even a plea for forgiveness. It was a threat. She was contesting the reversal of the deed transfer, claiming undue influence, claiming mental instability on my part, claiming, ironically, that I had manipulated Peter. The gall of it. A woman who forged documents while I lay unconscious now dared to question my mental clarity. I handed the letter to my attorney without a word. But what happened next? That was all me. I filed a civil suit. Not just to defend myself, but to formally charge Kelsey with fraud. And I named Peter as a co-defendant. It wasn't an easy decision. I still remembered holding Peter's tiny hand teaching him to tie his shoes, watching him read his first book. But this wasn't that boy anymore. This was a man who stood beside a liar and let her rob the woman who raised him. The backlash was immediate. Family members called me cruel. "You're suing your own son," one cousin gasped over the phone. "I'm suing the man who watched his wife erase me," I replied. The local community, however, was divided. Half admired my strength. Half were uncomfortable. After all, family matters should stay inside the home, they muttered. But I had kept silent for too long. Too many women had. The courtroom drama made headlines. Not just because of the money, but because of the principle. Here was a 70-year-old woman standing up against the younger generation who believed she had outlived her usefulness. I didn't dress in black that day. I wore crimson. My voice when I testified was calm. I didn't cry. I read from my journal. I showed the forged deed. I presented the recording's casual comments Kelsey had made about cleaning the slate while I was unconscious. The room fell silent. Then Peter took the stand. For a moment, I saw a flicker in his eyes. Regret, maybe. But it passed quickly. His words were prepared, coached, hollow. "I didn't know what Kelsey was doing," he said. "I just signed what she gave me." A wave of murmurs broke through the gallery. The judge ruled in my favor. The house was restored in my name. Kelsey was fined for fraud. Peter was ordered to return the funds he had taken plus interest. They left the courtroom without looking back. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. Victory didn't erase the pain of betrayal. That night, I sat in the living room of my new old house sipping tea by the fire. Tessa came by holding a small cake. "To fresh starts," she said, and I smiled. But I asked her something that had been gnawing at me since the trial ended. "Do you think I went too far?" She didn't answer right away. Then she placed the cake down, took my hand, and said, "No. But even if you had, Audrey, after everything, you were finally fighting for something that should have always been yours, your name, your space, your dignity. What about you watching from home? Would you have done the same? Would you have taken them to court or walked away? Comment your thoughts and where you're watching from." I read them all. 3 weeks later, I received a letter in the mailbox written in neat, hesitant handwriting. It wasn't from a law firm or the city or a debt collector. It was from Lily, my granddaughter. Inside was a photograph clearly printed from a phone. It was of a drawing she had made at school, a small house with a big red heart in the middle. 3 stick figures stood outside, one labeled Mom, one Dad, and one scrawled in a child's uneven letters, Nana. The note read simply, "Daddy said you're not coming back, but I miss you. Can I still visit you sometimes? I don't care what Mommy says." I held the paper in my hands for a long while, my eyes blurring. Children always know. They always feel what adults try to hide. A few days later, I was walking through the small farmer's market in town, buying fresh bread and strawberries, when I saw them Peter and Lily on the other side of the stalls. He looked older, thinner. Lily spotted me before he did. "Nana," she cried, tugging at his hand. Peter turned slowly. His eyes locked on mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Lily ran. She threw her arms around me, and I dropped my bag, kneeling to hold her. She smelled like soap and sun. She whispered in my ear, "Mom said not to, but I don't care." Peter approached, hands in his pockets. He looked at me the way a man does when he realizes too late what he's lost. "I didn't know she changed the deed," he said softly. I didn't respond. I should have checked. I should have asked. I let her handle everything because it was easier than standing between you two. Still, I stayed quiet. "Lily wants to see you," he added, his voice cracking. Would that be okay? I finally stood Lily's hand still in mine. I didn't choose to leave, I said, but I chose not to disappear. Peter nodded, eyes glistening. I know. We didn't hug, not that day. But something shifted quietly like the sun melting frost from a rooftop. A thread of something not yet mended, but no longer broken. That night, I sat on my porch, the one I had once wept on after being thrown out of my own home. Now it was mine again. But more than that, so was my voice. So was my story. So was my life. I thought of all the women like me, silenced in their own kitchens, erased from their own families, dismissed as burdens the moment they aged. I thought of the voices that tremble but don't break. And I knew this. I didn't fight to keep a house. I fought to keep from being written out of my own legacy. I am Audrey Wilson, and I am still here, still standing, still unbroken, still me. Have you ever been erased from your own story, pushed aside in the very home you helped build, dismissed as old, irrelevant, or too much? If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated, tell me. Tell us. Leave a comment below with your story. And don't forget to include where you're from, your city, your state, your piece of the world. You matter. Your voice matters. I want to hear from all the women who were told they were just the mother-in-law, and from everyone who stood up again even when the world told them to sit down quietly. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever been in Audrey Wilson's shoes, or fear you might someday subscribe to this channel, there's more to come, more stories of strength, more voices rising. Because when one woman speaks her truth, she lights the path for others. You're not alone. We see you, we hear you, and you still belong. Comment below. Have you ever been pushed out of a place that used to be yours? What did you do next? Type your city in the comments. We want to know where our strong voices are rising from. And don't forget to subscribe. There's more coming stories you won't want to miss, because the next chapter might be yours.